and welcome to my webinar. My name is Alyssa Fields, and I'm a rookie chef, a gluten-free baker. Definitely not an expert, just a gluten-free enthusiast. This webinar is to cover more of a casual conversation about gluten-free baking. Definitely feel free on the left-hand side of this Google Hangout to ask me Q&A anytime. And that also in the link of the invite, there were materials attached or a link to materials, and those are going to be the handouts that I'll reference. Again, this is a high-level overview of gluten-free baking and more or less tips and tricks that I've learned. It's also split up into two parts, basics and staples to impress. So the basics, again, just basic staples to impress, more how to kick it up a notch, still entertain while being gluten-free. So part one, gluten-free basics. So let's start with the basic of them all. What is gluten? Gluten is actually a general protein, derivative of rye, wheat, and barley, and of course any associated byproducts. It provides structure and elasticity to goods. And then obvious structures that are representative of that are, think pasta, bread, anything else that has that pillow-ness to it. Is it bad for you? Generally, no. Then why is everyone avoiding it? Because it does feel like everyone's doing the whole gluten-free diet thing. Well, of course, there's a small part of the population that really has to. Celiac disease, so those that suffer have an autoimmune disorder. It affects the digestive tract, and it's triggered by the consumption of gluten. It attacks the intestines, making it difficult to absorb nutrition. And they definitely fall very ill and need to avoid cross-contamination at all costs. The other section of gluten-free individuals tend to either have allergies, sensitivities, or just have a general preference not to consume it. Some of the issues noted for those groups are skin issues, digestive, and general fogginess, and other symptoms even including depression. I follow a gluten-free diet, and I have for about 4 years. My symptoms involved hives about every other day or every day, just extreme fatigue and nausea, and I suffered for about a year, constantly just having allergic reactions, and then they found out that I was allergic to gluten, but thankfully I do not have celiac. So the thing about gluten is it can be really sneaky. You can't just look at the ingredients list and look for rye, wheat, or barley. There's other words like bulgur, plub, spelt. I listed a lot of these in the handout, but the point is you can't always tell exactly what's a derivative. And they also make their way into, or it makes its way into everyday products. For instance, some makeups, toothpaste, medicines, salad dressings, soy sauce, ice cream, all these have had traces. Of course, it depends on what brand you're buying, but definitely showing that you have to look in a lot of places. And it can definitely be difficult to eat in your own home, let alone going out. So if you are going out, definitely I recommend checking online for an allergy listing. And then when in doubt, I always go with the salad. No croutons, vinegar-based dressing on the side, just to keep it even keel. So a gluten-free kitchen, what can that look like? Well, I would start with it depends on the severity of your gluten allergy. So if you have celiac disease, you definitely want to avoid any cross-contamination, as I mentioned. No trace amounts. I've known people that have had a cake made for them in a pan that had previously a gluten cake made in it. Even though the individual washed it out really well, dishwasher, all that, they still were very, very ill for a few days. So definitely it's a big ordeal for them. Others may have lesser reactions and so may not have to be so extreme with their environment. But one thing almost all gluten-free individuals will have in common is that they're going to have a variety of flour substitutes. I like to cook a lot and bake, so I have about 11, but you can make flour out of anything. So there's a lot of options. So as I mentioned, flour substitutions. There's a variety of flours because you can make them out of anything. And it's great because you can get comparable shape, texture, flavors as some of the gluten counterparts. A lot of them require gluten substitutes, which generally for me is xanthan gum. And then almost anything can be a flour until you can get some really interesting flavors. I have an extensive list on my handouts, but some of the standards, and I put little asterisks by these, potato, rice, coconut, and almond flour are all ones I use quite a bit. And I really count on those. So let's say you're going to be doing some gluten-free cooking or you're moving to a gluten-free lifestyle. What should you expect? Well, if you're baking gluten-free, I definitely think you have to start with some patience. You're going to have to do some research for the ingredients, and then planning, making sure you have the right ingredients to substitute out. Creativity, higher budget, because you're probably going to be buying at least some initial staples. That'll be a bit of a higher price point. And then open-mindedness, because some of the textures and tastes won't be anywhere near where you want them to be, but you just got to keep trying, because maybe an odd tasting cookie may be better than no cookie at all. One of the interesting benefits I have is that when you're cooking with gluten-free, you don't have to worry about over-mixing, because the gluten doesn't get activated because it's not there. So that is one benefit. And then also sometimes gluten-free diet falls in line with some of the other fad diets, such as like paleo. So that's always nice too. So for a basic flour recipe, definitely want to start off right. So I would recommend starting with a batch all-purpose gluten-free flour, which is what I provided here. That's not only going to afford you some convenience, but also it's super cost-effective. There are all-purpose gluten-free flours out there. For one, really good one is Cup for Cup. However, that one's about $18 for 2 pounds. This whole recipe will make you about 18 cups and costs you about $14 in total. So in order to make the recipe, you're going to need a storage container that can hold about 18 cups, and also a large bowl, because you're going to be mixing these items in. So as you can see, you're mixing brown rice flour, white rice flour, sweet rice flour, and then tapioca flour or tapioca starch. Mix that all up with about 2.5 tablespoons of that xanthan gum. That's the gluten substitute I was talking about. Mix them all together with a whisk for about 5 minutes. You can't overmix this, and then put into a large airtight container. And then when I get out to use it again, I still do a mix, because I want to make sure that xanthan gum is well mixed in there. Some of the uses for this recipe are going to be breads, cookies, crusts for pizza, and cobblers. And in general, you can use it in place of traditional flours in a recipe, but this is more of a catch-all, and it's not really gonna catch all. So if you want to, as I mentioned, kick it up a notch, I would recommend going to the staples that impress. So this is where I will go ahead and cover those items.